Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Israel WaterEuse virtual tour. It's an honor to kick off this three-part series, which will cover Israel's water reuse, regulatory approaches, case studies, technology, and agricultural irrigation applications. I want to start by acknowledging the 30 years of technical cooperation on environmental management between the United States Environmental Protection Agency and the Israeli Ministry for Environmental Protection. Thank you for this continued partnership. Thanks to all of you in the audience for joining today's session, and thank you to our hosts and partner organizations for making this event possible. Please allow me to introduce myself. I am Sharon Napier, the US EPA's National Program Leader for Water Reuse. I lead the agency's Water Reuse team, a highly technical group which works to expand our reuse expertise and serve as a resource hub to help build capacity supporting water reuse as a key resiliency tool across the United States and the federal government. Our team facilitates the implementation of the National Water Reuse Action Plan, or the RAP as we call it, which was launched a little over a year ago. The RAP is a collaborative that represents the efforts of more than 100 different partner organizations and is seeking to build financial, technical, and institutional capacity for communities to pursue water reuse practices. The plan now has 41 active actions underway, and the plan and the list of collaborators is growing. The goal of our collective efforts is ultimately to make water use safe, more accessible, and straightforward to implement as we experience freshwater shortages. One such action within the RAP is co-led by the Israeli Ministry for Environmental Protection, Israeli Ministry of Economy and Industry, and the EPA. And this brings us all together in pursuit of facilitating US-Israel collaborations on water reuse. Additionally, last month, EPA released the RAP Update on Collaborative Progress, a short document showcasing some of the key accomplishments of the first year of the action plan. It also forecasts our goals for the coming year and beyond, and I encourage you to check it out on our website. So we are in for a treat over the next 3 days. In today's session, we'll learn about the history, development, and regulation of water reuse in Israel. We'll see examples of decentralized water reuse in Israel and share information in a moderated Q&A discussion. I hope you'll also join us for the next 2 sessions. Tomorrow, we'll be covering water reuse implementation and technology, and on Thursday, the focus is agricultural irrigation. So as we get started, please do note a few logistical items. First, we recommend opening the chat feature to find further information and links to additional resources. We have already dropped a few great resources related to the Water Reuse Action Plan I mentioned previously. You can toggle your view using the view options on the top right corner of your screen. Please do feel free to use the Q&A box to submit questions to our presenters at any time, and we will answer them as time allows. And finally, following the event, you will receive an email with links to the session recordings and contact information for additional questions. Now, I am pleased to introduce Yifat Alon-Perel, the Minister of Trade and Economic Affairs at the Embassy of Israel in Washington, D.C. In her role, Yifat oversees the trade and economic mission and enhances bilateral commercial relations. Yifat, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Good morning and good evening, everybody, here from Washington, D.C. My name is Yifat Alon-Perel, and I'm the head of the Trade and Economic Mission in the Israeli Embassy, representing the Ministry of Economy in the Embassy. It's a pleasure, really special pleasure, to open this virtual tour, which, as Sharon said, is fruit of long months of joint work with our dear colleagues in the US side, spearheaded by the EPA Water Team and the Water Reuse Association, together with the professionals from the USDA and the FDA. Our joint work around water reuse was conducted in light of the ambitious US Water Reuse Action Plan, and we're very happy and proud to host the previous administrator in Israel on November 2019, Mr. Andrew Wheeler. That in a way kicked off our work together, which I'm so happy that has continued also through this current administration, and we still have a lot of work that we can and should do together. As the action plan also calls to continue to engage with Israel to build capacity, we are very, very happy to have this event kind of kicking this off more outside and less, or not only within us, the professionals in the government. Water scarcity is a challenge, and Israel has been facing this challenge for many, many years. We can say that since ever. But as the cliche says, every challenge is also an opportunity. I think that the Israeli example demonstrates that this is an opportunity to build innovative solutions and to think outside of the box. And this is what we really very much hope to do together on these days and hopefully continuing forward. On the Israeli side, we attribute the highest importance to this partnership, and you will be able to hear this also directly from the Israeli ambassador to the US that will speak here shortly. And we're committed to continue and fostering it. I want to take this opportunity to also thank all our friends and collaborators in Israel. Hopefully I won't forget anyone, because we have really been a very big group of professionals. So first and foremost, Adam Schlimzek at the Ministry of Environmental Protection, working hand in hand with us and the WaterEdge Authority, as well as the Ministry of Agriculture and the Volcanic Institute and the Ministry of Health, and of course the Manufacturing Association and the water community in Israel, WaterEdge.IL. This event wouldn't have been able to be carried the way that it is without the extensive and amazing work of my team. So I do want to acknowledge them as well, Mr. Omer Bab and Josh Cohen. Thank you guys for really the amazing work put in. I'm looking forward myself to wonderful and fruitful 3 days. And of course, we're continuing our wonderful cooperation. Goodbye, thank you.
Thank you, Yafat. Next, we're very fortunate to hear from Ambassador Gilad Ardan, who currently serves in the dual role of Israel's ambassador to the United States and the United Nations. Prior to becoming ambassador, Ardan held key ministerial positions in the government, including Minister of Environmental Protection, where he brought the issue of climate change to the center of Israel's public agenda. It is my great pleasure to introduce remarks from Ambassador Ardan.
Dear friends, it is a great pleasure to open this Israel Water Reuse virtual tour, together with our partners from the EPA, FDA, USDA, and the WaterEdge Association. The United States and Israel enjoy a strategic alliance based on our shared history, shared values, and shared vision for the future. At this critical moment, as we accelerate our efforts to build back better following the pandemic, and as we stand at the start of what President Biden has termed the decisive decade for climate action, I believe it is time for a new strategic climate alliance between our two democracies. An alliance which harnesses the innovation and ingenuity of our peoples, an alliance which will enable us to build greener societies, cleaner economies, and more resilient communities for both our nations. There is no better place to begin than with water, the very source of life. Water innovation has always been key to Israel's national life. Due to our water scarcity, our national economy, security, and resilience have always been tied to our water economy, security, and resilience. As a result, we became the world leader in water recycling, reusing today 87% of our wastewater. Israel is very happy to share our experience and expertise with our greatest friend and ally, the United States of America. We are deeply committed to expanding our strategic cooperation in water reuse as envisioned in the Water Reuse Action Plan and our MOU. This commitment found expression over the last 5 months as we undertook an unprecedented consultation involving Israel's sharpest minds from government, academia, industry-leading corporations, startups, and NGOs in order to map out areas of common interest and lay the groundwork for long-term practical collaboration. Today's first-of-its-kind virtual tour is one of the outcomes of this process. Over the next 3 days, dozens of leading experts will share their cutting-edge knowledge on water reuse policy, science and technology, and together with their American counterparts, highlight potential pathways for collaboration. Our goal is to build as many bridges as possible between all levels of government, the private sector, and civil society. From the field of water, this climate alliance can grow to other areas of urgent importance, such as renewable energy, low-carbon mobility, and, of course, circular economies. Together, we can build a future that is healthier, more secure, and more just. This U.S.-Israel Strategic Climate Alliance can be expanded to include other countries as well, especially those facing the challenges of water scarcity and a desert climate. Cooperation on the water reuse cycle can help expand the circle of peace. And the challenges of the desert can be fertile ground for joint innovation. As I recently told Special Climate Envoy Kerry, we should work to establish a new Middle East Climate Forum, led by the United States, of course, but include Israel and the Abraham Accords countries and all nations committed to a sustainable future for the region. Thank you once again to all of the American and Israeli government bodies and organizations who helped turn the vision of this collaboration into a reality. I look forward to working together. Thank you very much.
What an inspiring message. Thank you, Ambassador. It is my pleasure to now introduce Jane Nishida, the Acting Assistant Administrator for EPA's Office of International and Tribal Affairs. In her capacity, Jane leads EPA's international and tribal portfolios and is responsible for the full range of EPA's environmental policy development and program implementation in tribal lands and in sovereign nations outside of the United States. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jane.
Thank you. And thank you to Ambassador Ardon for his remarks. It was exciting to see that the partnership between EPA and the Ministry of Environmental Protection has grown since 2012, when the ambassador, then the Minister of Environment, and former EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson signed a memorandum of understanding. And I would also like to thank Yifat and Sharon for your remarks, and for all those who worked with EPA to plan this event, including the WaterEdge Association, the Israeli Ministry of Environmental Protection, the Israeli Embassy here in Washington, and other collaborators in the US and in Israel. Welcome everyone to today's important event on water reuse. EPA has a long history of working with Israel. We have been exchanging technical information and conducting technical exchanges since 1991. This partnership has allowed both EPA and Israel to address some of our most pressing environmental issues. In October of 2018, as was mentioned, EPA and the Ministry of Environmental Protection renewed our collaboration through a new MOU that focuses on innovation in water reuse, contaminated sites cleanup, and energy efficiency buildings. Our cooperation gives us an opportunity to address priority environmental issues through the sharing of best practices and the promotion of innovation in environmental technologies. The event today is an important example of this. By providing a virtual tour, participants will have the opportunity to hear case studies and to learn how Israel came to reuse almost 87% of its water. While this event is the product of our collaboration with Israel, I am pleased to report that we have at least 700 participants from 49 countries, including our partners here in North America, Canada, and Mexico, as well as partners around the world, in the United Kingdom, Japan, South Africa, Brazil, and many more. Water reuse or water scarcity is a growing challenge, not only in the United States, but from around the globe, as is evidenced by the number of participants that we are that are joining us here today. And this water scarcity is because of the pressures from drought, from climate change, from population shifts, and from aging infrastructure. As my colleague Sharon noted, EPA has established the National Water Reuse Action Plan, or RAP, collaboratively with our federal, state, tribal, local, and water sector partners. Its purpose is to enhance water security, sustainability, and resilience. The RAP has, as was mentioned, now partnered with more than 100 organizations and individuals to build technical, financial, and institutional capacity for communities to pursue water reuse approaches that are accessible, straightforward to implement, and sensitive not only to climate, but also to environmental justice considerations. Our specific action in the RAP, one specific action in the RAP is to facilitate the US-Israel collaboration on technology, science, and policy of water reuse. The action highlights how Israel has become a global leader and it has accomplished extensive infrastructure, regulatory, and institutional reform to recycle 80% of its wastewater to address water security issues, and quickly becoming a leader in applying recycled water for agricultural irrigation. Over the last year, Israel and US experts have formed an action team and held regular discussions to build a knowledge sharing partnership. The event today is a testament to the need for international exchanges that build capacity and foster stakeholder cooperation on water and other important environmental issues, as the ambassador noted. Israel's participation in the RAP has fostered information exchange on policy, technology, and agriculture to advance water reuse in the United States in a meaningful way. We look forward to a US delegation mission to Israel later this year, hopefully, if COVID allows, and to continue work under the EPA Israel Ministry of Environmental Protection MOU. I want to again thank all of the event organizers and collaborators for today's virtual tour of water reuse. And now I turn it back to Sharon to begin our tour.
Thank you, Jane. It's an honor to hear you speak to the importance of partnerships in water use as we prepare for a more secure water future. I would now like to introduce you to Adam Schlimzek, who will lead us into the next portion of the agenda. Adam is the head of the International Relations Division at the Israel Ministry of Environmental Protection. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Sharon. It's really an honor to be part of this initiative and working together with you in the US and with my Israeli colleagues to promote this very important event. In my capacity, I am coordinating the close and very broad bilateral cooperation we have with the EPA. And we are so grateful for this cooperation, which has spanned now 30 years. This remarkable event today is featuring a great group of speakers. So it's really an important step in our cooperation. So Sharon, as you mentioned, we have 3 days in front of us. And I hope that everybody who is connected today will also join us tomorrow to hear more about the approach of our approach to water reuse implementation, technology, and mechanisms. And also on Thursday, where we will hear about Israel's agricultural irrigation efficiency through recycled water. I think Thursday is going to be a very, very interesting day. Also tomorrow, of course, and today, but Thursday is, I'm very curious to hear the speakers on Thursday. So our first part today is an overview of the history, development, and regulation of water reuse in Israel. And in this part, we have 3 very experienced speakers from the Israeli government. As the ambassador said, the sharpest minds and some very good colleagues of mine. The first one is Mr. Danny Greenwald, who is a Senior Deputy Director General for regulation at the Israeli Water Authority. Danny will present the development of water reuse in Israel, including the legal and regulatory framework. He will be followed by Mr. Alon Zask from the Ministry of Environmental Protection, who will present additional aspects of legal and regulatory framework. So Danny, the floor is yours, please.
Good morning for everyone in the States, and good evening or good late afternoon for everyone in Israel. As Adam said, I'm Danny Greenwald from the Israeli Water Authority. The Israeli Water Authority is the regulator of the Israeli water sector. And let's dive into the professional part. We'll be talking about the development of reuse water in Israel and how it fits in with the Israeli model of the integrated water sources of management sources. Please flip. I'll be giving a brief overview of some information about Israel with hints that will help us later on their presentation. So where is Israel? Israel is in the Mediterranean. It's along the Mediterranean Sea. Everything you see on the left, dark, that is the sea. As you can see, Israel is long, and large part of it is beside the sea. This will be important later on when we talk about what we used our wastewater for. You can see the top part of the screen is greener or browner. This is an area which has a lot of rain, and down south, it is a desert with very little rain. I'm right now in the town of Eilat, which is at the bottom of the slide, where we have practically no rain. Flip. Climate. We have a long, dry summer, meaning it rains only in the winter. Winter is from November to March, and the rest of the year it's dry. We have no rain. Also, when we have rain, there's a very big variation in the amount of rains. As more north, generally, the more north you are, there's more rain, and the southern part of Israel is a desert, and there's no rain at all. Flip. Our population in Israel. Can you please flip a slide? The population in Israel has been growing rapidly. If you can see from the 1960s until today, the population has grown 4 times. Also because there's a lot of migration to Israel, and also the birth rate in Israel is very high. So our population is constantly growing. This means that we constantly need more water to supply to the population because the population is bigger, and we are constantly constructing more and more infrastructures to take care of also supplying the water and taking care of the treated wastewater. When we build the system today, we will build it for 40 to 50 years ahead, depending on what kind of pipe we're using, and we have to try to understand what will be the population that we're trying to serve, and by this build the infrastructure, which is a challenge, which again we will touch later on. Flip, please. Our water balance. If we take our natural water sources and we take our water use, then we see that we're short of about 45% of our water. Meaning, if we would only build our system on our natural water sources, we would not have enough water to serve the population. Our population uses about 170 liters per year per capita. It's not a very high rate, so we don't have much to go down on the use per person, and we have to find more water sources that we can drive into the system so we have enough water to supply. Flip. Generally in Israel, we're talking about a population of 9.5 million people. Agriculture irrigated area is about 200,000 hectares. There are about 1,000 industrial plants in Israel using water. As Israel always had a shortage of water, most of the industry that was developed in Israel is industry that do not use a lot of water. We will see an example later on a paper mill, which uses and how he deals with shortage. We're talking about 2 to 2.5 billion cubic meters per year, and about $2.5 billion dollars is the whole market financial. Flip, please. Okay, what do we use our water for in Israel? And this has changed during the years as the population has changed during the years. But if we're talking for the last few years, this is information for 2018, but it hasn't changed dramatically. About half of the water is used for agriculture. Now, agriculture is for irrigation and pressurized systems. As I mentioned, we have a long, dry summer without any rain. So almost all of this water is supplied from April to October, and it is not divided around the year evenly, but it is in the summer. We have a domestic use of about 43%. We supply water to our neighbors. Our neighbors are the Palestinian Authority and the Kingdom of Jordan. Jordan, we also buy water, but we supply more than we buy. And we also, in years of drought, then we also supply water to nature to make sure that the ecosystem continues. As I will specify later on, our agriculture today, most of the water, or more than half of the water, are reclaimed water or low quality water, and not potable water. Flip, please. So how do we run our system? We have developed a sustainable approach for managing our waters, which has four pillars. The first is the integrated water resource management, which I will touch today, and I will briefly talk about what we mean. We have governments and regulation. We encourage efficient use, and we have to develop new sources of water. Flip. Okay, let's talk about the integrated water resource management. Flip. But before we start that, I want to talk about the Israeli water law. The Israeli water law, and this is very, very different than the states. And this is why I'm starting with this, so we'll understand what cards we have when we come to play and run the system. So in Israel, all the country's water is public property, and it is run by the state. It means you don't own your groundwater, you don't own a lake, you don't own a puddle. Any water you have, and water is including sewage or treated wastewater or stormwater, it is all run by the government, so you will have the water for the public. This means that I, as the water authority, which is the regulator of the Israeli water sector, we have a great ability to influence how this market works. And how have we done? How have we used this power during the years? Please flip. When the state of Israel was founded, it started with transferring water from area to area. The northern part of Israel had a lot of water. It had the only lake in Israel, the Sea of Galilee, which it's called a sea here, but it's really a lake. It's not even a very big lake, but it's a lake with sweet water. And there are two main aquifers. We have a shore aquifer, which is a sandy aquifer, and we have a mountain aquifer, which is a cracked aquifer. And we connected with a conveyor system these three water sources. The system was designed to flow from north to south. Part of it is in channels. Most of it is in a pressurized pump. And in this way, we could allocate. We could transfer the water from the north, where we had more water than was necessary, to the south, which had less rain and was dry. And this enabled to have also water for the growing population, for drinking water, and have the agricultural use. Flip. This was conveyed in the 1950s and 1960s, but as the population continued growing, then we needed more water. And then we started using reclaimed wastewater. The reclaimed wastewater was used in various qualities. In each quality, we found what to do with it or what it can be appropriate with. But this meant that we had separate supply systems, because every different quality of water needed a separate supply system. Almost all the use of the reclaimed water was for agriculture. So we will see the use in agricultural areas. Agricultural areas, you can see on the map on the left, we have two different colors. We have, well, I'm colorblind, so I think it's blue or purple is the direct use, and the green or brown on the left bottom part of the side, that is a non-direct use after a soil aquifer treatment. We'll touch that as well. Now, what we see on the right side is a reservoir, because we use wastewater all year, and we manufacture a treated wastewater, which we can use all year, but we need the water for irrigation in the dry season. So to allow us to use as much water as possible, then we build reservoirs, and in the reservoirs we accumulate the water in the winter and use it in the summer. And you can see here a reservoir which is not far from the Dead Sea, You can see in the bottom of the picture a dates that are grown with the treated wastewater. And then last few years, you can also see solar panels on the reservoir. Last few years, there's been a very big jump in Israel in using solar panels, also on the sides of the reservoirs and also flowed water. Flip, please. So we started in the 50s and 60s by using transferring water from the north parts of Israel to the south part of Israel. And when we again had a shortage, then we transferred we didn't transfer, we had additional use. We had additional use of reclaimed wastewater. And around 2005, we started large-scale use of sea desalinated water, or desalinated from the Mediterranean. And every few years, we build another facility. And this is also the future we see. So if we were missing water, we talked about that, we're missing about 45% of our natural water sources. So we're adding treated wastewater and we're adding desalinated water. Now, as I mentioned, Israel is long and it is almost most of it is quite close to a shore. So if I want to desalinate seawater, I can do it quite easily because I have easy access to the sea. So please. And we can see the accumulation of use of seawater RO from the different facilities. And right now there are 5 facilities, and the 6th one is being built, and the 7th one is being planned. We'll start building in a year or two. And the 8th one, we already know where it will be. And every few years, we'll just add another one in. Philip, please. Now, in this integrated approach, where we're using our different water sources, which are natural water sources, and sea desalination and treated wastewater, we really have to have a good database. And we have a very good database, and we put in a lot of effort into the database to understand how much water we have, so how much water we can use. So on the left, you can see accumulated rain in different areas. From this, we can assist how much rain there was and how much of it infiltrated into the aquifer. On the bottom right, you will see levels in different aquifers, and we're constantly measuring. Today, it's also automatically measured levels in the aquifers, so we know how much water we have. And all water production, if it's wells and pumps or sewage treatment, it is all we collect all the data, and we have a good database on how much water we have and how much water we can use. Flip, please. Of course, we want people to use water efficiently, and the key usage for water efficiently in Israel is water measurement. Every apartment, every household, every kindergarten, every school, every synagogue, every church, every mosque, everyone have a measurement, know exactly how much water they use. Their water tariffs, everyone pay for water. Hospitals, religious communities, everyone pay for water. If you have measurement and you have tariffs, then you'll have an efficient use. And we have water quotas for agriculture, and we have R&D, which allows us to improve. Please flip. Okay, how did we develop? In the 1960s, we had local tentatives for agriculture. We will have we will have later on an example from the Emek Hefer, and he will show how they started using it. It was local from bottom to up. In the 1980s, we had a governmental development by the Mekorot. There was a jump, we used much more. The use of Mekorot is a governmental company. It means that the state could take the risks of demand. And from year 2000 and on, when it came standard procedure using treated wastewater, then we have the private sector developing it with government support. Flip, please. Here you can see the amount of sewage manufactured, the amount of sewage which is collected, and the amount and treated, and the amount of reclaimed water use. Of course, if you don't collect the sewage and you don't treat the sewage, then of course you can't use it. Okay, this is a very basic phenomenon that we all have to understand. Please flip. As I said, most of the wastewater in Israel is used for agriculture. A system structure for using for agriculture will usually be a treatment plant, what you can see on your left bottom, a seasonal reservoir where you accumulate water in the winter so you can use it in summer. You will have a pumping station and pipes to bring the water to the farmers. And all the farms you see in this area, all the green, this is all plant. This is all use of treated wastewater for agriculture. Flip, please. This was an example for a direct use. We also have one large system in Israel of a non-direct use. It is called the Shaftan. It collects the sewage from Greater Tel Aviv, inserts it into the soil, in the soil aquifer treatment, pumps it out, and is used for agriculture. We will also have, during these 3 days, we will also have a demonstration of that plant, so I will not go into it right now. Flip, please. A change we've been doing in the last few years is regional water systems. As our system was developed, which every town would have a wastewater treatment plant, and the wastewater treatment plant would have it beside a small facility for using the treated wastewater. It used to have one reservoir and limited use. We saw during the years that this was not very efficient, because every one of these little faculties, or we would call it a little kingdom, these little kingdoms, each one of them either had too much treated wastewater which couldn't use efficiently, or there was too little. And since the year of 2007, we've worked to connecting these with a conveyor system. You can transfer the treated wastewater from area to area, and we have a much more efficient use. We do not transfer the wastewater. The wastewater is used wherever it is manufactured, but the treated wastewater we transfer from area to area.
Danny, you have 5 minutes left.
Okay. A few examples for how the system works. We have a reservoir, we'll have a pumping station, we have pipes, and of course we have agriculture that will use water. Flip, please. We also have a little bit of use for landscaping and gardening and industrial use. This is an example of landscape using and gardening in Hodos Sharon, ecological park. The lake, the small lake you see, is treated wastewater, and all this facility is irrigated with treated wastewater, and it is very popular for young families to come and visit there. Flip. If we take the difference that was done in the last 20 years, we have gone down from 77% using potable natural water to 35% potable natural water, and we've introduced different water sources as treated wastewater, reclaimed or treated wastewater, and desalinated water. And for this is how we've designed our system, that now we have a sustainable system, and we can go on running the system, not running the system down. Flip. Usually you start talking about policy, but our policy has changed during the years, as we've been using treated wastewater from the 60s. So I will go through the policy today. First of all, we want a full use of wastewater. We want to minimize the disposal to the environment, and use as much as we can in regional systems. We believe in economy efficiency. Okay, we have different qualities, and the different qualities we'll be able to use them with economic efficiency. If I don't have to treat the water for drinking water, because I don't have a shortage of drinking water, I have a shortage of water for agriculture, then I would prefer to invest less in treating the water and having it in a better price. And we have fairness. Fairness is who pays. We'll have a special, tomorrow we'll have a special lecture about that, but we will have the sewage producers pay for treating for the water, and the reclaimed water users paying for the reuse, and the state will step in to cover the external costs. Flip. Thank you very much. This was very brief, but this was the first meeting of in this event, and the next 3 days we'll be developing it more and more. Thank you.
So Danny, you're not going to speak about the legal and regulatory framework, or is Alon?
I will. Just give me a second. I'll breathe.
Okay.
Okay, next topic. And in this topic, I'll be talking together with Alon Zaskin, the Environmental Ministry. Okay, what are we talking about? The management of the regulatory framework. We look at the system as a whole. Okay, we plan the system as a whole, and we run the system as a whole. And it starts with our water production. Our water production in Israel, our natural sources are natural, but every water we're producing, for instance, from the desalinating, we think what we're going to use the water for. So if we want it for agriculture, we start with a very low EC, very low chloride, very low sodium, very low boron. So the end product will be able to use it. The water we transfer, the low salinity water we transfer into the municipalities. The municipalities, we will make sure that no hazardous waste is added into the sewage. So our sewage system will be able to work. We will have a sewage wastewater treatment plant, And at the end of the circle, we will see the water used again for agriculture. We have to see this whole system as an integrated system to run it. If we will not be able to run one part of it, the whole circle will collapse. Flip, please. I talked about the Israeli water law, so I'll just skip this and just say we can run the system. We have the power, we can run the system. Flip. How do we run the system? We run the system based on the Water Authority Board. Until 2007, the regulation on water was divided by many governmental agencies which couldn't work together. And the law was changed, and the Water Authority was founded, where I work as the regulator of the Israeli water sector. And the Water Authority Board was founded when it has representatives of different ministries of the main stakeholders and 2 representatives of the public. And this is one table for making the decisions and one table for implementing the regulation. We saw this made a very big difference. Flip. So we have regulation to support and a support system towards building the sewage collection systems, because if you don't collect the sewage, then you have nothing to treat. We have regulation on disposals of substances into the sewage, because we have to make sure that our sewage systems will be able to function efficiently, and that the end product will be appropriate for use for agriculture. We will have regulation on sewage treatment, meaning to what rate the sewage has to be treated so you can reuse it. And we have the Ministry of Health, which, by the way, is not in the Israeli Water Board, because we wanted it outside, because to make sure that it will not be influenced from will not be influenced when it decides if the water is suitable for use, which gives permits per plot to make sure that the water is safe. Flip. A few examples of influence of industry and what our regulation deals with. So we will have a regulation on sulfate and pH, which destroys the pipes. We'll have an oil and grease, which clogs the pipes. We'll have on phenols and detergents, which damage the ability of the treatment plants to work efficiently. We'll have on heavy metals, which accumulate in the sludge. And we'll have on chloride and boron and sodium, which will affect the ability to use the water. These are examples we have. Who are our players which we run our regulation on? Flip, please. Our players are all of the players that we have in the water sector. We have the water producers, which could be either people pumping water from a lake or from groundwater or a desalination faculty. We have a national transport system, which is run by the Israeli National Water Company, Bekorot. We have many local suppliers which supply the water and collect the sewage. We have the sewage treatment plants, and we have the reused water users. Flip, please. And what are our toolbox when we're playing with all these players? We have licenses, yearly licenses, which we give all players, determining where they get the water from and who they're supposed to supply it. We have water quotas for agriculture. We have rates that motivate different players to play by the regulation. And we have market-oriented incentives to run the system. Flip, please. Bottom line, we have come to a situation with governmental support, and we have sewage treatment of almost all the sewage treatment is collected and is treated. We have an annual use of about 500 million cubic meters of water. We also have it here in different in measurements using the stage, which unfortunately I don't know very well. We're talking about between 85 to 90% use of the water. It changes yearly because of depending on the amount of rain. And the reclaimed water is now the main water source for agriculture, and it leaves us potable water for water use. I would ask Alon Zask, which is representative of the Israeli Ministry of Environment and a member and the representative of the Israeli Environmental Ministry in the Water Board, to continue. Thank you.
Yes, Alon. So it's an honor to introduce you, my dear colleague. Alon is Senior Deputy Director General for Natural Resources at the Israeli Ministry of Environmental Protection. And Alon, I urge you to be very concise since we are already running a few minutes late. Please, Alon.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you all for joining us. it's a pleasure, and I will continue straight ahead from what Danny just said. Danny showed you the table of the Water Authority board, so this is my chair over there. Although because of the COVID, it was, you know, by Zoom in the last year or so. But this means that this table really makes all the decision and taking into consideration quite a wide point of view in terms of what to do. Today we are going to talk briefly, and later on we'll talk about health issues. We'll talk about, next please, we'll talk about pollution prevention in Israel and the environmental aspect of the wastewater reuse. We'll talk about standards and implementation steps that we took in order to get into this 87% of reuse of effluents. Next, please. Wastewater reuse. Wastewater reuse, the national policy calls for a gradual replacement of freshwater allocation to agriculture by reclaimed effluent. We can do it, and the whole system is kind of working upon to do these things. This means that we are doing our system in a centralized way with building up some big centralized wastewater treatment plant. Next, please. You can see in the slide that, you know, since the 19th even, in the last 25 to 30 years, we are getting quite a lot of big wastewater treatment plant, which means that we can really treat them in an intensively way, and of course, in a cheaper way than we used to have. Next, please. What is the toolbox that we are using? We are using, of course, information, because we can't do anything without it. We are doing quite a lot of inspection to see whether the regulation that we are doing is suitable and actually in order. We are doing the regulation that Danny mentioned, and all sorts of regulation on top of that in terms of pollution prevention. And it's not going well enough without enforcement. And this is something that we are doing, enforcing the regulation for the whole water sector. Next, please. Wastewater reuse really could cause significant risk to soil, to water, to agricultural crops, to groundwater, rivers, of course, and to the sea. And this is without saying anything regarding public health also. So this means that the potential of risks is high enough that we can really need to take care about it. Next, please. The potential impacts of wastewater components might be for water source and public health, the organic pollutants, nitrogen, phosphorus, chlorides, toxic compounds such as heavy metals and organochloride, etc. To plants and the soil is high salinity, acidification of the soil, excess of boron and excess of nitrogen and phosphorus. Next, please. So what should we do? We want to use this effluent, but first of all, we need new stringent standards for effluent quality. Next, please. We built up a new standard. It's not so new because it's from 2010, but still it's new, and it's standards for effluent quality. The new regulation is regarding 37 different parameters, and the standards take into consideration the environmental, the agricultural, the flora, the public health, and hydrogeological aspect. And we need to bear in mind that till we get these standards, the past legislation was just 2030 in terms of BOD TSS parameters. And the use for agriculture of the effluent was pretty restricted. Next, please. It's not going so easy and so fast, as you probably mentioned. we first of all looked upon what are the water quality needs. Then we've done some scientific preparation, and then we write down the regulation writing. Afterwards, we need to went to Parliament to approve these standards and give quite a lot of time to assimilation. And as I mentioned beforehand, it doesn't go without inspection and enforcement. And this way we can assure that those standards are taken into consideration, and really people are doing it on a daily basis. Next, please. What are the ways to achieve the new standards? We are talking about salt removal, that this treatment will be at the source. We are talking about supplying water that will be with low concentration of chloride, desalination of the treated effluent, and do some source separation at the source. We're talking about boron, and we're talking about metals, organic, TSS, nitrogen, phosphorus. This means that we will need tertiary treatment at the wastewater treatment plant, and of course pathogens, and this will means that we will need to have disinfection at the wastewater treatment plant as well. Next, please. I won't go into the details regarding the parameters, but we are talking about the EC, the SAR, the chloride, sodium, boron, fluoride. Next, please. You will have the presentation so you can have the standards all around. You need to take into consideration that this treatment might be and need to be at the source, and it can't be treated at the wastewater treatment plant. Next, please. The effluent quality standards such as BOD, TSS, COD, the total nitrogen, ammonia, phosphorus, DO, pH, fecal coliform, and residual chloride, those can treat it at the wastewater treatment plant. And we need to make sure that the wastewater treatment plant and the tertiary treatment is suitable to do so. Next, please. Regarding the heavy metals, there are really strict regulation in the new standard regarding the concentration. And actually what we've done is we divided the regulation into two, whether the water is going afterward, the effluent is going to irrigation, and then you have one parameter and then another standard whether these flows go into the environment. Next, please. We have some more treatment. We need that. You can go next, please. What are the processes that need to be upgraded at the wastewater treatment plant? If we are talking about nitrogen removal, so we need anoxic or aerobic biological processes. Next, please. If we are talking about phosphorus, we'll talk regarding anaerobic or aerobic biological processes or chemical precipitation. Next, please. In terms of residual constituent removal, we are talking about coagulation or flocculation or filtration. Next, please. And in regarding to effluent disinfection, we will do either chlorination or dechlorination afterwards and UV. Next, please. I'll finalize with the cost. The cost, of course, is changing with time. It's getting cheaper and cheaper. When we've done this, it was approximately around 10 cents of a dollar per cubic meter. And you need to bear in mind that the cost actually is divided between the farmers who are taking the water and the wastewater treatment plant or the municipalities. Next, please. And actually, this will be my last slide. I will just say that you can see here one of the regulations that we've done. This regulation takes us, as you just So about 20 years or so. It's still ongoing, but we can see and we can actually assure that more and more wastewater treatment are doing a tertiary treatment. And this way we can assure that the farmers can get these permits of watering the system with reuse water. And also it means that because we are talking about tariffs, that the wastewater treatment after treatment will be still cheaper than potable water. And that way we are preventing the pollution from getting into environment from one side and getting another good, stable water source, such as a water effluent. Thank you. Back to you, Adam.
Thank you very much, Alon, and thank you very much, Danny. Our third and last speaker in this part is Mr. David Weinberg, who is National Planning and Treated Effluent Reuse Manager at Israel's Ministry of Health. David will talk about supervising treated effluent reuse. David, you have the floor, please.
Hi, so good morning to everyone. I would like to thank the organizers and everyone who has joined in for expressing interest in the water and effluent solutions in Israel. Please flip. So a bit of background, Israel is small and it is only 5% of California in size. Please flip. We have 9 million inhabitants and they live mainly in the center and the north of Israel, so it is densely populated. The climate is semi-arid. In the south is a desert similar to New Mexico, and in the center and the north, we have over 500 millimeters of rain per year, but the rain falls only in 3 to 4 months of in the winter and during a total of a few days only. So much of the rain flows to the sea. Please flip. In the 90s, we had a water shortage crisis, and it was solved by building desalination plants and by effluent and reuse in agriculture. Our drinking water is supplied from wells, the pink dots you see, and from seawater desalination plants and from Lake Kinneret, the Sea of Galilee. We are very proud of the high quality of tap water in Israel, and the Ministry of Health did not approve of potable effluent reuse. We preferred a safer water source, and this solution is better suitable for Israel, using regulatory and natural barriers to ensure public health. Please flip. We have 370 MGDs of sewage produced and treated in 90 big wastewater treatment plants that treat over 90% of the total sewage, and about 300 small wastewater treatment plants. And 86% of the effluent is reused, mainly in agriculture and some in public garden irrigation and in industry. 50% of the effluent today is tertiary. And today we have 45% of the water in agriculture is treated effluent. Please flip. This reuse requires monitoring in 3 levels. The first level is monitoring industrial sewage that goes into the sanitary public sewage, and 37 different chemicals are monitored, and factories are fined for deviation from the required levels. Please flip. The second level is monitoring the sewage and the treated effluent in the wastewater treatment plants. Our 2010 effluent quality regulations that we call in shortly the 10-10-10-10 regulations. That is because we demand 10 milligrams of liter of BOD, of TSS, of ammonia nitrogen, and 10 fecal coliforms per 100 mLs. This is about 50 times less stringent compared to the California regulations. In most wastewater treatment plants, the technology is activated sludge or similar biological treatment, plus deep bed filtration, chlorination with a minimum concentration times, contact time, the CT of 30, and this is 15 times less stringent than the California regulations, but it is enough to reach 10 fecal coliforms per 100 mLs and 6 log virus reduction. The quality is similar to the quality demanded in the European 2020 regulation for effluent that can be used to irrigate raw eaten vegetables, and this is what is allowed in Israel. So BOD, TSS, and COD and fecal coliforms are sampled twice a week by a Ministry of Health approved private laboratory that reports online to the Ministry of Health, to the Ministry of Environment, and to the Water Authority. Please flip. So the wastewater treatment plants need to report also the online monitoring parameters, such as turbidity and chlorine residual, via an internet application. The reporting computer software has a BI function helping the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Environment, and Water Authority to stay informed of the treatment levels at each wastewater treatment plant. Please flip. The third monitoring level is on the effluent users. Using treated effluent requires a permit. It is illegal to use effluent without an annual permit. Effluent irrigation started to grow in the 90s, and today the Ministry of Health gives over 4,000 permits per year. Each plot borders are outlined in our GIS, along with the data regarding the effluent source and the crop growing in that field. Please flip. For that, we need a good crew of inspectors that meet the farmers and help them fill in the request forms and help with the GIS mapping and help in environmental sampling. Please flip. The farmer can choose what he wants to grow, taking into account the effluent quality, the type of irrigation, usually drip irrigation or underground drip irrigation. That influences the distance kept between the effluent and the fruit and vegetable. Please flip. All combinations available for the farmer are part of the 1999 application regulations that take into account also the produce characteristics such as vegetables that are eaten only cooked and fruit that has non-edible peel. Please flip. The inspector makes sure that the distance between the irrigation and the public uses are kept, the distance between buildings and roads. He makes he must check the possibility of cross connections between drinking water, effluent pipes, and distance to water wells. And he makes sure that the alerting signs, could you please flip here? Yes, that alerting signposts are put up and that purple piping is used. Monitoring is also in effluent reservoirs. We take in account the complex piping system that moves effluent between the different reservoirs according to the area it is needed. Monitoring is also in public gardens, irrigation with treated effluent. The effluent for public garden irrigation must be just a bit better in quality and have a monthly median of 0 fecal coliforms and a maximum of 14 fecal coliforms per 100 ml in any single sample. Please flip. The effluent is used also in industry and usually to wet dirt roads in quarries and also in cooling towers at power plants. The Ministry of Health monitors polio routinely in sewage and to prevent outbreaks. And at the last year, we monitor coronavirus RNA in sewage and for outbreak prevention, also using RNA sequencing to collect data on the different corona variants. These days, corona is very low in Israel due to public vaccination. So detecting a rising corona in the sewage might help in preventing another outbreak. Please flip. At the last few years, there's a lot of research going on regarding micropollutants from the CEC, the Chemicals of Environmental Concern Group, including pharmaceuticals. Better lab capabilities help quantify lower concentrations of many pharmaceuticals and other chemicals in the environment. We find very low concentrations in sewage, in treated effluent, in vegetable irrigated, and with effluent, and in the urine of vegetable consumers. Although another research showed that environmental concentrations of a very environmental stable chemical named carbamazepine impaired development of chicken embryos. So pharmaceuticals in effluent could potentially have a greater influence in Israel, as Israeli diet includes a lot of fruit and vegetables, and a bigger portion of the vegetable consumed are irrigated with treated effluent. Please flip.
David, you have 2 minutes left.
Yes, the CECs are not regulated in effluent for irrigation in the United States and Europe, and more research is needed to find out if this is needed. But we made a health risk assessment in the Ministry of Health, and for carbamazepine that showed very low risk, even when eating vegetable-rich diet. Last flip, thank you. I will finish with my presentation in presenting a project that we are planning these days. It is a 32 MGD module in the expanding Shafdan wastewater treatment plant, our biggest one, and in which we will use membrane bioreactor, ozone, biological activated carbon, and UV to reduce 8 log Giardia and Cryptosporidium and 10 log of virus and 85% of the CECs. The effluent will keep on being used for irrigation, and we are planning on monitoring different CECs in a pilot plant that we are building. So thank you very much.
Thank you, David, for adding this angle of wastewater reuse. And now we turn to the second session of this day, which will introduce you to case studies of decentralized water reuse in Israel. And the title of this event is a virtual tour in Israel. So I would like to invite Mr. Tzvika Gerber, who is the CEO of Afikei Emek Hefer Water Association, to take you on a virtual tour of the Emek Hefer region in Israel, where there is very broad reuse of municipal wastewater. Tzvika, please.
Okay, good evening and good morning, everybody. We are here in Emek Hefer since 1984. The cooperation of Afikei Emek Hefer start working. It's a cooperation of corporations, 26 moshavim and kibbutzim, villages, is owners of this corporation. And we make this cooperation because of the dry years and the quantity of fresh water cuts to 15%, 50% by the government. So we were from the first, I think, first corporations in Israel that start using the sewage water. Emek Hefer is 13,000 acres, agricultural acres, and we don't have enough water in this period in 1984. So we start build reservoirs, and now we have 7 reservoirs. 4 of them is for sewage water, purified sewage water that we get from the city of Netanya, the municipality of Emek Hefer, and from other municipalities that neighbor to us. We have these reservoirs, about 18 million cubic of water, and we use this water. This one is especially a new one, very nice reservoir of 3.5 million cubic of water. Anyway, we have in each reservoir a pump station, of course, and a chlorifying station. All our water is chlorified when they go to the farmers. We water all the area of Emek Hefer by 30 million cubic of water, of sewage water, rainwater, and if we missed water, if it's a dry year, we have more than 35 wells that with high nitrates that we can't drink this fresh water, and we use it to complete our quantity for the farmers. We export water also to the municipalities in the north of Menashe, Bikat Anadiv, Chof Carmel, it's near Haifa, and Ramot Menashe. We export them by pumps and pipes, more than 8 million cubic of water. In our activities, we have on each reservoir, we have a panel, solar panel station that supply our electricity to the pumps, and we save a lot of money, and we can keep normal prices to the farmer that they can raise all their activities. We have also in Emek Hefer we find some wells that they were good water, but with high nitrates, more than 70, which can't use for drinking. So we built in every well a treating center, a small one, and now we supply almost the all water, the drinking water, to Emek Hefer from our wells. The quality of our water is considered a very good one. Most of our water is by the 3rd degree of treatment, and we can use it for every kind of vegetation. We have also a 2nd degree of treatment that come from the West Bank in our Yad Hana place. Treatment water. This water we can use only for some trees. And we get, of course, the rainwater, which we have a special reservoir on the Alexander River. The Alexander River is streaming only for about 5-6 times per year for 12 till 48 hours. So we built on the bank of the river a very big pump station, which can pump 30,000 cubic per hour from the river, and fill a reservoir of 1 million cubic, 1.1 million cubic in 36 hours. We fill the reservoir, we get 1 week to the mud to dry down, and then we remove this water to other reservoirs of rainwater, or mix them with sewage water, which is makes them much, much better. This reservoir, we fill about 5 or 6 million cubic per year. It depends, of course, if it's a dry year or or a good year with a lot of rains. We also have, as I told you, a panel solar about on all our reservoirs. Now we built this is panel solar, and we built on the water about 22 megas of electricity, which let us make a more cheap prices of the water to the farmers. We have also a biogas station, which we collect all the manure of the cows from Haifa to Tel Aviv, about 1,000 cubic per day of manure, and we make from it with the also manure of the chickens about 10 megas of electricity per hour. We have also from the house, all the garbage from the house, organic garbage, we collect with a special places, and we also bring them to the biogas place. So we make more electricity, and of course a green electricity. And I think all these activities that we used to is to keep the farmers to raise all the agricultural, and also we keep on nature, as you can see in the pictures. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tzvika. I really enjoyed this tour. It's a beautiful area in Mikhefer, and it's really impressive to see how you managed to reuse this amount of water and also export it to other areas. It's a true inspiration. Thank you very much. I now would like to give the floor to the last speaker today, Dr. Mark Lerner, who is a wastewater treatment plant manager at Hadera Paper Plant. Mark will shed some light on water reuse in industry in Israel. Please, Mark.
Yeah, thank you. Hello all. Next, please. Slide. I wanted to begin my discussion. I wanted to say several words about Hadera Paper. Next, please. The Hadera Paper story began in 1951, when several businessmen from USA decided to build some small cute paper machine for production package paper. And after the 70 years, the Hadera Paper has several big paper production machines for packaging paper and for writing and printing paper. And today, Hadera Paper is a leader for recycling and paper production, and they have several activities, among them the collection, processing, recycling of paper waste. Also, we produce and sell packaging paper for corrugated carbon industry, and we manufacture and sell corrugated carbon. And all of these activities form a so-called circular economy. We began from the collecting waste. After we produce some intermediate product, this is a packaging paper, and after this, we produce some end product. This is, for example, corrugated carbon packaging. Next, please. Several words about the paper production. As 2,000 years ago, in order to produce paper, we need some raw material. This is fibers. We need some device to produce the the paper. For example, today this is a paper machine, and we also, the next please. Also, we need fresh water. This is a very important source. For example, in the past, for production 1 ton of paper, the international paper industry used from 15 to 100 cubic meters. Today, the paper industry use from 10 to 20 cubic meter of fresh water for production 1 ton of paper, and this is a good result. Next, please. Of course, we need electricity and steam for drying. Next. We need the chemicals in order to improve the quality of paper. Next. Of course, we need workers. And in the end, we produce some product, this paper, but on the other hand, we produce some byproduct, and this is wastewater. Next, please. Therefore, the international paper industry and the Hadera paper also face two problems. From the other one hand, we need to minimize the freshwater use while increasing the paper production. And on the other hand, we need some treatment of wastewater in compliance with authority requirements. Next. Okay, and how here in Israel in Hadera paper we solve those problems, those two problems, freshwater minimization and wastewater treatment. First of all, regarding the freshwater minimization, this is using two different water sources, where it can be possible to use purified processed water instead of fresh water after some treatment, for example, filtration. This process is called water circle closure. On the other hand, we can use treated effluent, and we reuse some effluent which we treat in our wastewater treatment plant. But it should be defined which consumers exactly in a paper machine can obtain recycled water, because there is some processes in a paper machine that can use only purified or fresh water. So, for example, chemical for chemicals, and on the other hand, defining the effluent quality that's needed for paper machine consumers, because this is, makes no sense to treat wastewater to ultra pure quality if you know some paper showers can use water with some levels of suspended solids or some levels of organic load. Regarding wastewater, we need, and what we do, we selected appropriate technologies for wastewater treatment, and we checked, we choose, we applied some innovative technologies that's not used until today in paper industry, and I say in the next slide. And on the other hand, we previous, please. Yeah. We didn't and we don't afraid to integrate different wastewater treatment technologies from different industries. The next important point is the design and constructing a system for use of treatment of treated wastewater or treated effluent. I mean pipes, pumps, tanks, control devices, because it's prohibited to mix fresh water and processed water system. And the next, this is the theme, this money, because all these technologies, all this process are not cheap, and we need to set budget priorities during the years. Next, please. In this slide, we can see our wastewater treatment plant, wastewater treatment technology. We began from a primary treatment system for removal suspended solids. After we use anaerobic system, this is innovative anaerobic system for removal organic matter. After this is a aerobic treatment, we use activated sludge for pollution of organic matter. The next please. This is a softening treatment. Why softening? Because wastewater of paper industry contain a large amount of calcium carbonate that's precipitated in pipes, pumps, and so on. And we need to soft this water. We use some new technology that's called crystal actor. This is a technology that's applied only here in Hadera paper. And we use some lime milk and sand in order to decrease the level of calcium. And we decrease from 600 ppm of calcium carbonate to 100. And the process duration, this is several minutes, and with extremely low pH, 8.3 and 0.4. The next stage is this is the active flow. No, the previous, please. The next stage, this is the active flow lamella sedimentation units. This is also only here in Hadera paper. There is some this unit. This unit for removal colloidal solids, and also we use sand, coagulants, and flocculants. It's a very important stage in the wastewater treatment plant. After this, we use some pressurized sand filtration for pollution. And after all this stage, we have a high quality effluent that we can reuse in a paper machine, and we reuse a part of this effluent in paper machines, and other parts go to the river. Next, please. Here you can see that the implementation of the wastewater treatment technologies allowed reduce the specific freshwater consumption. You can see during 10 years, we reduced the water consumption from 7.5 cubic meter per ton paper produced to, in the past year, it was 5.9 cubic meter per ton. And our budget in this year to 2021, this is 5.7 cubic meter per ton paper. Next, please. Regarding the effluent reuse, we increased from the 2018 to 2020 from 380,000 cubic meter per year to 540 cubic meter per year, 1,000 cubic meter per year, and this is approximately 35% of freshwater consumption in a paper machine. And our purpose, our budget in this year to 2021 is 650 1,000 cubic meter per year. Next, please. And of course, regarding the quality of the effluent after wastewater treatment is absolutely in compliance with authority permits. And in terms of COD, TSS, nitrogen, phosphorus, and so on. And you can see that our specific wastewater consumption or production is below than base available technology of Europe paper industry. And you can see that this is today this 5.6 cubic meter per ton paper, and in the Europe and the average 6.8. And that's it. Thank you. Next.
Thank you very much, Mark. This was very, very interesting. And I want to thank all the speakers today for the enlightening presentations. And now, without further delay, I'm very pleased to hand over the moderation role to Ms. Kuti Ravalia, who is the Consumer Safety Officer at the Division of Produce Safety, Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition at the FDA. Kuti will lead a moderated Q&A discussion with our speakers. Kuti, the mic is yours. Kuti, you need to unmute.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, Adam. I wanted to give a hearty thank you to all of our presenters for these first two sessions this morning or this afternoon. And I wanted to invite a few of the presenters back to participate in some of the panel discussion. I'd like to invite Danny Greenwald, David Weinberg, and Savika Gerber to come back and join us for some questions. The first question that we wanted to talk about is what was the focus on agriculture for the water reuse activities? What prompted that focus? And what were we saw in earlier presentations that the microbial quality criteria for reuse water was 10 MPN of fecal coliforms per 100 ml and 2.2 coliforms, MPN coliforms per 100 mLs for the recycled water. So how did the regulatory decision come about to have those metrics as standards? And then could you also talk about if there's any, if there have been any related foodborne illness outbreaks associated with crops that have been grown in Israel?
Well, I think I'll start relating for why the water is used for agriculture, and then my colleague David will answer about the health aspects. The water is used for agriculture because that was the best, most efficient way we could use it. We could use it for agriculture in a lower quality than for potable use. And we started using wastewater in the 60s. In the 60s, we didn't have technologies for using the water for potable use. And mainly because we don't have a shortage of water for potable use. I mean, we have a shortage of water for all uses, and most of our water used for agriculture, so we could aim it there. Potable use, we could continue using our natural sources, or see desalination, which is very available because it's close. We're close to the Mediterranean. The households can pay the price for the desalination, which the agriculture will find it more difficult. So it really solved the problem. We were missing water, and we can add water from desalination for population use and save money in wastewater treatment plant until it's appropriate for use for agriculture. And about the standards, I suggest that David will continue.
I will just add that, as Danny said, in the 70s and 80s, we had a wastewater treatment plants polluting rivers. As our rivers are very small, so this effluent had a very bad impact on environment. And agriculture in Israel is there's a demand for water almost all year round. And we believe that if we do the agriculture reuse, it can be done safely. So back in 1999, the committee that decided on effluent quality tried to find as many uses possible for the effluent without endangering public health. And we used the WHO, the World Health Organization, the barrier system, which the microbial quality needed in Israel for rawly eaten vegetables is 10 times, what we decided is that it should be 10 times more than what Spain in Europe demanded, and 100 times more than what the WHO recommended. And once again, you have to remember that that this is still much less stringent than what is needed in California. Regarding outbreaks, to our best of knowledge, outbreaks due to tertiary treated effluent irrigation did not occur yet. So we didn't have outbreaks yet, but it is difficult to be sure. I'll just give a bit of background. It is compulsory to have medical insurance in Israel, and visiting the doctor every day is not with extra pay. And doctors must report to the Ministry of Health epidemiology unit any one of 70 different illnesses. It is difficult to decide to know if everyone that has a tummy ache goes to the doctor, and if every doctor reports to the Ministry of Health. But for now, we don't know of any outbreaks, and one should say that this is the reuse is going on for more than 30 years, and for now we find it safe.
And then just a follow-up question to that, is there any plan to consider emergent pathogens? So say, for example, pathogens that are not necessarily ones that are generally associated with crops currently or previously, potentially pathogens that may have hardy oocysts that may not respond to chlorination or any of the other treatments at the wastewater treatment facility.
Once again, first of all, the answer is no. We don't know of any other places in the world which do that. And the WHO recommendations were based on a lot of research to see what's the connection between the different concentrations and affecting public health and the different uses.
Thank you so much for the response to that question. We have a second question, and it was, how were the decentralized facilities prioritized in terms of the development of water distribution infrastructure of water reuse for agricultural purposes? What determined the funding priority?
Okay, I think in this case, I'll also start, and probably Tzvika, which is actually doing the processing and using the system, will be able to continue. Let's start from the opposite direction in Israel. In Israel, our potable water system is centralized. We have one system, a grid, a national grid, or we call it the national conveyor system, which allows us to transfer water from water, because we believe that we have to have a very high, so the spreading of the potable water is important. We have to have all the population get it. We don't have enough sources, so we really built the system very robust that can transfer water from area to area. But with the treated wastewater, we're trying to get the best value. We're trying to get the best value as they're a lower quality, and we have a separate transportation system for transporting them. We have a separate pipe system. We're trying to get the best value. The best value is to use the water as close as possible to where it's manufactured. So if we have a town manufacturing wastewater and we have an agricultural area around it, try to use it as much as possible in the close area. But we have to keep in mind that we can't use it everywhere, because, for instance, we'll have constrictions of hydrological situations or places where we don't want it too close to the aquifer or to the population. So we really started in very local systems. A municipality will have a treatment system and will have its local use. and the support systems, the financial support systems given by the government were aimed for the best value, and the best value were the decentralized systems. As the years go by, we realized that we do have to connect the systems on a regional area, not on a national level, but on a regional area. Because otherwise each one of these systems would either have a surplus or had too much water or too little water and couldn't use it efficiently. So we've connected these systems in the region to enable transferring water from area to area, but it's only in the region. And also here we financed it, we helped financing it, and we prioritized by price. We only have one really large-scale system, which is the Shafdan, which I think they're presenting tomorrow, which there it's a non-direct use, and there we're taking the water far away, over about 100 kilometers, because the Tel Aviv municipality, metropolitan, has a lot of wastewater. It's the largest populated area in Israel, and very little agriculture. It's all been built, so there we've really transferred the water far away. I think if Tzvika, which runs a system like this, could add, it would be good.
Tzvika, would you like to add anything to?
I'm sorry, I was muted. I say that Danny covered all the subject. Good pupil.
Okay, thank you so much. And finally, from our prepared questions, is there anything that the panelists would like to share with the audience as far as lessons learned, or knowing what you know now? Were there particular challenges that you might have managed differently in policy development? Can you also describe how receptive or unreceptive stakeholders are to the concept of using reused water in an agricultural setting? Were there opportunities? Were there challenges that were notable that might have made a difference in outcome had you done something differently?
Well, I think if we would know ahead of time, there would be many things that we did differently. But I think most of the decisions that were taken at the time they were taken, I think they made a lot of sense. I think we have two different ways to think about this. One is the opportunity is to use get the best value out of the water, and this is using it in a relatively low quality. We don't have to bring it to standards of potable water. We can use it in lower standards for usage that is appropriate, like agriculture, and you can really make a difference if you're talking about agricultural use of things that humans eat or things that people don't eat. You can have a different standard if you're growing cotton, which is totally mechanized, or if you're growing cauliflower, which you eat the flowers. And make a difference if you're on over an aquifer or not an aquifer, if you're close to households or far from households. So this is one point of view. But the other point of view, if I would start building a system today, and today we're quite different. We've built a system that we prevent adding our pollutants. I mean, I'll start with very low content seawater, desalinated seawater, and I'll make sure that the industry doesn't add substance and the municipality doesn't eat substance, and I'll treat my water. But I'll always have a problem on quality control at the end. I will always have the problem that maybe some factory, something will happen, it will pour a lot of salt into the system and the water will not be suitable for use. In the past, we didn't have options. Today, with the new technologies, there's probably, it makes sense to think about treating the water after the use to get a better quality control. And if you already treat it to high quality, not to use a separate supply system as we do today, and these separate supply systems are expensive, but to seize the opportunity to use it as a one supply system for all uses, and which cost benefit in the future as the technologies get better might improve. This is my opinion.
Would anyone else like to add to that? Okay, great. Thank you so much. We'll take a few questions from the participants. So we have one question for David. How how do you encourage reuse and recycle in industrial installations, especially those that are water intensive? Are there regulations for industrial reuse?
The quality needed for industrial reuse is the basic quality needed for vegetables eaten raw, irrigated. We allow any industry that wants to reuse water, providing it doesn't endanger public health. So we won't let it be used in the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry, but other industries we can let it be used and give permits for that. Regarding or making sure that public health isn't impaired.
Okay, thank you. I think we have another good question from the audience. How are you combating the removal of PFAS and PFOAs?
Right now, all these, the micropollutants are not required to be removed. As I said, more research is needed to decide if this is a need. Do these, we know they are in the effluent and in the environment, but the concentrations are probably much lower than concentrations that can have any effect on public health. This needs to be more researched and once again, the health risk analysis we did for just one chemical, carbamazepine, showed a low risk, but once again, other chemicals and combination between other chemicals could always add to the danger, and this is something that there's not enough research about. And not having enough research is doesn't allow us to regulate it without any known cause.
Are there plans to include research studies to inform regulatory development among emerging pollutants and contaminants? Among other contaminants that besides PFAS and PFOA that we've discussed, perhaps microplastics or other contaminants that are becoming more prominent and prolific in our water sources?
We try to keep in touch with the academy and see if there's any new data concerning public health via effluent irrigation. As for plastic particles, I really don't know of any research showing that these actual danger to public health. These things are all around in the environment, and it doesn't mean that it has to be totally cleaned out of effluent irrigating, as Danny said, especially if we are talking about cotton and things like that. So there's no real extra risk.
I think about plastic particles. I think it's probably much more affecting if you're disposing the treated wastewater into a river or into the sea, where the flow of the particles goes with the water and with the waves. In our case, when we're using it for agriculture and we're influencing into the soil, I would assume they would accumulate on the top surface and be much less dispersed into the environment. But this is just thoughts that we've had discussing it. We really haven't researched it.
Thank you. Another question from the group building off of that one. We talked initially about pharmaceuticals and some tracking of pharmaceuticals, but are there additional plans that specifically address pharmaceuticals in reclaimed water for irrigation, or pharmaceuticals that are typically considered or addressed under more general water quality standards?
Well, I didn't prepare any data on the quality of drinking water standards in Israel. There is a much longer list of chemicals which we monitor, but once again, the different substances are yet to be researched and to see if there's any potential effect on public health.
We're monitoring systems also in mainly in groundwater and in surface water from areas where treated wastewater has been used for agriculture, including places where it's been done for dozens of years. We do not see the effect, or we do not see an effect from the irrigation more than the effect that we would see from leakage from systems of sewage systems or places where they used to use septic tanks. We don't see it. Now, it doesn't mean that we won't see it in the future, but today with the technologies we have and the analytical specialties we have, we do not see the problem. And we're looking. I'm clear. We're looking as many places in the world. There are teams working because it makes sense that there will be a problem, but we can't find it.
So when you say that you're looking, does that mean that you have analyzed soil samples, or if there's any potential groundwater that's accumulated, you've analyzed those samples? Okay.
Mainly groundwater, also soil samples, but mainly groundwater from plots that were irrigated back to the 70s, including, and in the past there was much less awareness and the treatment was not as good and the prevention was not as good. And even in sandy soils where we would think that it would flush down, we're not finding it in the groundwater.
That's a compelling result. You know, a lot of the work that we have done in the US shows deposits of whatever the water has been carrying into the ground. And so that it's very compelling to hear that.
I want to say in surface water, we found it. Surface water, starting from things like caffeine, which you know that someone had coffee for breakfast, and we've seen it, but in groundwater, very little.
Yeah, it makes sense that groundwater may not have as much, but even for soil samples, you know, when we look at the filtration of water through soil, I mean, the soil column is a filtration mechanism that would hold whatever is being filtered out. So that, again, that's really, really compelling. Lastly, we had talked about the WHO approach and it being a hurdle method. And the ultimate goal of applying all of the hurdles to water management strategies is to come to an outcome of drinking water quality. And so I guess, what was the decision-making factor to kind of allow, so it's sort of a combination effect, right? So you have both the treatments that are being applied at the municipal level and then also the hurdles that are being applied at the farm level. And so is there any sort of synergy that goes on between the growers that are applying those, the treated wastewater to their crops and kind of an understanding of application of all these varieties of hurdles to prevent contamination to the crop?
Excuse me, what does hurdle mean?
Barriers.
So
barriers,
I think
yes.
is what
Okay.
yeah.
So once again, we use the barrier system, and it's a combination of the different costs of treatment on one hand and the potential risk. And so we believe that irrigation is the lowest risk especially when compared to a portable reuse. So we believe that it is that if we talk about a breakdown in one plant of a reuse for portable purposes, it could be quite endangering for public health. And via the hurdles you talked about, it's safer.
I think there's an understanding between most of the stakeholders about the importance of using treated wastewater in Israel because of the geographical area and understanding of the population of water shortage. And for this reason, we have there's a calibration between the different stakeholders. If we could talk about it in the government, then we have the health ministry, which is our guardian, making sure that we don't make mistakes and do stupid things that will endanger the population. We'll have the environmental ministry, we'll have the water authority, we'll have the agriculture ministry, all working together to find a way where how this waters can be used in the most efficient way without causing danger neither to the environment or to the population. We have the farmers, which are looking for a water source and looking for the best value water source, and they're very interested for this to work. We will have the municipalities that have the legal responsible of collecting the wastewater and treating it. And we even have an understanding of most of the industry, which they understand the importance of what they're sending down the drain so that we will be able to use it. This works in Israel fairly well. It's not, there are many flaws, but it works fairly well. But I think it's part of the understanding, again, in Israel, because of the chronicle water shortage of water. You can read about it in the Bible on people fighting on water. People in Israel understand that it's important to deal with water. Water is a real issue, and I think this helps. This helps also with the barriers, because the understanding of the population is relatively good. Places, for instance, I've been in Europe, which have never suffered a shortage of water. They don't really understand what we're talking about. The population is not aware of it, and there isn't a willingness to change or a willingness to work together to solve this problem.
One thing that in comparison to using portable reuse, we don't really have to the public accepts it. When you buy a potato in the market, if it's irrigated with potable water or effluent, people don't mind and don't ask, and it's not written on the product. So we don't really have to, people understand that the effluent is used for irrigation, and it is quite accepted.
Well, thank you all so much for your input in the panel discussion today. We've had some really great conversation around the regulatory framework and regulatory development. And I think, you know, it's really great for everybody to hear this variety of perspectives. And, you know, bringing the topic of agricultural water reuse to the forefront of the conversation is going to be key.
Kruti?
Yeah.
One
Yes.
thing, while David, Danny, and all of us answered, I tried to answer the Q&A by writing it. So look at them, because some of the answers are already there.
Thank you, Alon. Thank you. I'm going to hand it back to Adam to close out the session this afternoon. And again, thank you so much to all of our panelists and participants.
Yes, thank you, everybody. I mean, this was really great. I mean, I know a few things about water and water reuse in Israel, but I really learned even more today. And it was great to listen to these speakers, very enriching. I hope all the participants find it useful too. I think we learned a lot today, but we also learned and we saw the potential, I think, for cooperation between the US and Israel on these issues, joint research, joint development of policies, and so on. And there's really a great potential there. And we want this series of events today, tomorrow, and on Thursday to lay a foundation for broad exchange of knowledge on water reuse policies, technologies, research, and practices between our countries. So please don't hesitate to reach out. You can see the emails here on the screen. You can visit the EPA's website, of course, to learn about the RAP and also about the cooperation with Israel. And we'll be happy on the Israeli side. We'll be very happy to assist and to answer questions, to make connections. And wherever we can help. So you're invited to join us tomorrow again as we dive deeper into Israel's approach to water reuse, implementation, technology, and mechanisms. We'll hear a presentation about the Shafdan, the biggest wastewater treatment plant in Israel, and we'll listen to presentations by some technology companies who will present some solutions that they have. And on Thursday, we'll hear about increasing Israel's agricultural irrigation efficiency through recycled water. A lot of interesting research and innovative developments. So really, I want to thank you all for joining us today. And I hope to see you again tomorrow and on Thursday. And please stay in touch. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.